How deep into the abyss of despair can one sink when all dreams and hopes crumble and invested funds turn to dust? Imagine a person standing on the brink of a precipice, realizing that their well-being, their future, everything they believed in, is dissolving before their very eyes. What a storm of emotions they must feel: rage, helplessness, disappointment. And who is to blame for this downfall? Consumed by anger, Polakov couldn't find the words to express his indignation. He had invested all his savings in buying an apartment, dreaming of a quiet and cozy nest. Instead, he found himself deceived, betrayed. And the culprit of his misfortunes was that very realtor woman who, in his opinion, didn't deserve even a scornful glance. Suddenly, Polakov abruptly stepped towards the open window. For a moment, a flicker of horror crossed Katya Belonogova's eyes. Would he really take such a desperate step? Throw himself down from the 6th floor to end this entire nightmare? But no, Polakov only pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, as if seeking solace in the nicotine smoke. In the stuffy office, where a suffocating heat prevailed, Polakov frantically puffed on his cigarette, blowing clouds of smoke towards the window. But to no avail. A thick haze hung in the room, which immediately made Katya want to cough. She sat on an uncomfortable chair, choking on smoke and fear, not daring to make a sound, so as not to provoke even greater anger from the client. The office was cramped and uncomfortable. 2 desks, an iron safe, a coat rack, and a map on the wall. That was the entire furnishing. A travel agency was once located here, but it went bankrupt, leaving behind only the map as a reminder of unfulfilled dreams and distant lands. Katya's boss, Ksenia Mikhailovna, had left her mark on the interior, hanging her diplomas and certificates on the walls, along with a poem calling for humility and wisdom. Don't anger others, and don't get angry yourself. But it seemed Polakov had no intention of following this advice. He flicked the cigarette butt out the window, pulled his chair closer, and fixed an angry gaze on Katya. The ordeal continued. How untimely that Ksenia Mikhailovna had gone on vacation, leaving Katya alone with the enraged client. Alina and Emma, experienced real estate agents, were busy with their own matters, only occasionally appearing in the office. It was Katya's first time having to resolve such a complex situation on her own. Vladimir Polakov was her first client entrusted to her by Ksenia Mikhailovna. The purchase of a 3-room apartment seemed like a simple and promising deal, opening doors for Katya into the world of real estate. She enthusiastically took on the task, diligently studying documents and inspecting apartments. For a week before the deal, she hadn't slept from excitement, dreaming of how everything would go smoothly. And so the apartment was chosen, documents checked, and the deal concluded. Katya was proud of herself, hoping that she and Polakov would meet again someday. But who could have known that this meeting would happen under such circumstances? "So what are we going to do now?" Polakov demanded menacingly, interrupting her thoughts. Katya blushed, biting her lip. She was only 25 and he was 31. Not such a big difference, but in his presence, she felt insecure and foolish. Polakov possessed a powerful aura, drawing attention and filling the entire space. He resembled a legendary Russian knight with golden hair, blue eyes, and broad shoulders. Only his gold-rimmed glasses and elegant hands revealed him to be an intelligent and educated man. Katya secretly called him a Viking, and sadly thought that next to such a man there should be a strong and confident woman, a Valkyrie. But she herself, small, pale, and quiet, resembled the snow maiden more than a warrior. Tell me, how long have you been in real estate? Have you received any specialized education? Polakov inquired, staring intently at the real estate agent. I took real estate courses, Katya replied, trying to speak confidently, though her voice treacherously trembled and her palms were clammy with sweat. I've been working here for almost 4 months. Well, your experience is, shall we say, impressive, Polakov remarked sarcastically. Listen, Vladimir Ilyich, I told you. What's your education? You went to university, didn't you? Polakov interrupted her, not letting her finish. What does that matter? Katya asked, surprised. Actually, I graduated from the Pedagogical University, Faculty of Natural Sciences and Geography. Oh, natural sciences and geography, Polakov mumbled. So why didn't you work at a school? Why did you decide to change professions? I did work, Katya said, inexplicably defensive. For 2 years. But I had problems with classroom discipline. The students didn't listen to me, she blurted out, then thought with horror, why am I telling him all this? So, the students didn't listen to you, and you decided to get into real estate to ruin people's lives? Polakov was clearly joking, and Katya should have been glad the tension had eased, but his words unexpectedly stung her. Why are you saying that, Vladimir Ilyich? I tried my best. I chose the apartment for you as if it were for myself. It's good, even excellent, isn't it? You yourself said you always dreamed of such an apartment. You like the view from the window, and the documents are in order. And the fact that the previous residents didn't immediately deregister is common practice. When it comes to extensive practice, Ekaterina Belonogova, you are unmatched, Polakov noted with irony. Vladimir Ilyich, please stop, Katya pleaded. I'm certainly new to this field, but Ksenia Mikhailovna, our director, also says that this happens almost always. People deregister from a sold apartment within a month. That's normal. And that they forget their elderly relatives. Is that also normal according to your esteemed Ksenia Mikhailovna? Polakov hissed, losing his patience again. No, that's not normal, Katya exhaled resignedly. But I couldn't have foreseen this. Vladimir Ilyich, how was I supposed to know it would turn out this way? Do you think I arranged this on purpose? I don't think anything. I just want to know what to do now. You can go to court, Katya timidly suggested. You are the owner. He will be forcibly deregistered. All right. Polakov stood up from his chair and sighed wearily. I'll be going then. Goodbye, Vladimir Ilyich, Katya squeaked. Call if anything comes up. If anything comes up, are you implying I might have to pay something more? Polakov smirked. No, Katya said, startled. I just meant, you never know. Katya blushed, angry with herself for her inarticulacy, awkwardness, unprofessionalism, and inability to communicate with people. Polakov looked at her intently and left without another word. With his departure, Katya should have felt relief. But when the door closed, she felt as if she had been robbed. No, even murdered. Meanwhile, Polakov, having left the real estate agency's office, was already dialing the number of his school friend, Vitka Shakov, a successful lawyer. Shakov speaking, Vitka replied. Hi, Victor, Polakov said, emphasizing the second syllable. Ah, hey there, Lenin. Shakov still called his friend by his childhood nickname. Listen, I have a problem here. What happened? Long story short, in the apartment I bought, there's a person registered to live there. "That's not a big deal," Shakov interrupted. "He'll deregister within a month. That's normal practice." "You're going on about practice, too." Polikov frowned, annoyed. "Just listen first." "Yes, I'm listening, sorry." A father, daughter, and grandfather were registered there. The father and daughter deregistered, but the grandfather remained. They moved to Nizhny Novgorod, bought an apartment there, and left the grandfather behind. "Just like the cherry orchard," Shakov chuckled. "What?" Polikov wasn't strong on literature. "Nothing, just a thought." "Go on." "So, yesterday I met with this Maxim, and he handed me the keys. He said they had moved everything out, deregistered, and were leaving. Not a word about the grandfather. And I, fool that I am, even thanked him and wished them a safe journey. That evening I came home, and I saw a light on. I thought, maybe they forgot something. I go in, and there's the grandfather lying in bed. I ask, "What's going on? Why haven't you moved out?" And he mumbles something about a heart attack. I went to the housing management office, but it was closed. Anyway, I went to Olga's. I'm staying with her for now. In the morning, I went to that office again, and they gave me the registration certificate. The grandfather is still listed as a resident. Those bastards deregistered themselves but didn't take him with them. They left him like a piece of luggage. Victor drawled thoughtfully. Well, well, well. So what are we going to do now? The real estate agent from the agency suggested he go to court to have the unwanted resident deregistered. You can certainly go to court if he doesn't deregister voluntarily, Shakov, his experienced friend, confirmed. But be aware, if he claims he has nowhere to go, that he's ill and needs help, the court might rule in his favor and let him stay with you. Polikov was shocked. What? Shakov explained. What did you expect? Our judicial system is known for its humanity. Usually, of course, such people are forcibly deregistered and evicted, regardless of whether they have other housing, as the apartment transfers to the new owner. However, the elderly and women with children, as socially vulnerable categories, can be granted a deferment of up to a year to find a new place of residence and register. How long? A whole year. Polikov was outraged. For some old man to live in my apartment for a whole year? I'm actually planning to get married. Shakov calmly replied, I'm just outlining a possible scenario for you. Therefore, it might be worth trying to talk to him kindly, heart to heart. You're good at persuading, after all. As a last resort, offer him money. It's quite likely he has relatives he could move in with. Victor pondered. Maybe I should go to Nizhny? I have the address where they deregistered. They gave it to me along with the registration certificate. Shakov laughed. How naive you are, Lenin, and a leader at that. I'm willing to bet they gave a fake address. When someone says they're moving to another city, they're taken at their word, and no supporting documents are required. So, that old man could just as easily be in Murmansk, or even still here. How will you find him without an address? Only if you happen to run into him. Most likely, he and his daughter decided right away that they wouldn't take the old man to the new apartment. Those scoundrels, Polikov cursed, and after saying goodbye to Victor, drove to his office. He had his hands full with work, as the construction business is always bustling in the summer. He decided to talk to the old man that evening, hoping everything would somehow sort itself out. But Polikov's hopes were in vain. Nothing was resolved. When he and Olga arrived, the old man was lying in bed. Aside from that ugly iron bed, and an old-fashioned wardrobe packed with the old man's belongings. There was nothing else in the apartment. The previous owners had moved out all the furniture. The apartment was clean, quiet, and echoing. Only in the farthest room, an unwanted old man groaned and tossed, his spring mattress creaking. Polyakov and Olga approached his bed and looked down at the uninvited guest. "Good evening," he mumbled. On the floor beside the bed was a glass with a set of dentures. "Wouldn't say it's a good one," Polyakov snapped. He tried to speak roughly and harshly, but his heart involuntarily tightened. The old man seemed to be 100 years old. On his thin, cartilaginous nose, old-fashioned metal-rimmed glasses sat crookedly. He looked small and pathetic. He tried to sit up, extended a thin hand to greet Polyakov, but winced in pain and let his head, crowned with snow-white baby-fine hair, fall back onto the pillow. "My name is Vladimir Ilyich, and yours?" "Forgive me, I didn't catch it." "I'm Vladimir, too," the old man introduced himself. "Konstantinovich." "Oh, how charming. Namesakes, then," Olga drawled, a tall, beautiful 30-year-old brunette, barely shorter than Polyakov. They had been dating for 3 years, and Polyakov had finally decided to propose to her. He couldn't explain why he had hesitated for so long. Olga had everything: striking looks, education, upbringing, a sharp mind, and sex appeal. But Polyakov felt something was missing. Ultimately, when Olga began to insist on marriage, he promised to buy a larger apartment, and then they would get married. They couldn't live in her rented apartment or his studio. By finalizing the purchase, Polyakov resolved the housing issue and sealed his marital fate. The prospect of marriage took on clear contours, and Olga was happy. "You understand, Vladimir Konstantinovich, this is my apartment now. I bought it, and you have no right to be here." "I understand. I understand. I understand everything. Please, for heaven's sake, forgive me. I fell ill. How untimely. My heart seized up. I'm disturbing you. This is such an inconvenience." "Inconvenience? You're putting it far too mildly, my dear man," Olga interjected. "My husband, well, my future husband and I, were planning to move in here today. And how do you imagine that? Why on earth should we tolerate your presence?" Vladimir Konstantinovich nodded, grew agitated, and began to speak hurriedly, apologizing, looking at Olga with teary, faded blue eyes, dulled by old age. Polyakov watched Olga too. She was indignantly ranting, honing her eloquence on the old man. Polyakov suddenly thought, how malicious she is, and her voice, how unpleasant, piercing and sharp. Why hadn't I noticed it before? Doesn't Olga feel any pity for the poor old man? He's suffered enough already. His own son and granddaughter abandoned him. The real estate agent, Katya, came to mind, quite inappropriately. She was Olga's complete opposite, and just like this homeless old man, she had looked at him, frightened and timid, when he had reprimanded her that morning. His heart tightened once more. Suddenly, Polyakov's question to the unwelcome guest broke the silence. "You must be hungry?" Olga, frozen with an unspoken phrase on her lips, glared at Polyakov with a scorching look. "No, no, please, don't trouble yourself," the old man fussed, trying to ease the tension. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Olga hissed, full of rage. "Are you going to feed him now? Maybe you'll offer to change his diaper too?" Polyakov remained unperturbed. "I merely asked if he wanted to eat," he replied calmly. "He's a living person. He hasn't gotten out of bed for 2 days, maybe longer. Do you want him to starve to death?" The old man tried to interject again. but I don't really have an appetite." But Olga didn't let him finish. "What do I want? I'll tell you what I want, Volodenka." Her voice rose to a shout. "I want you to stop dithering, act like a man, and deal with all of this. I want no strangers in our apartment. I want to move in here, as we planned, and start a normal life." "Olga." "What, Olga?" Polikov sharply cut her off. "I've been Olga for almost 30 years. And anyway, stop making a scene for an audience." She rushed out of the room, her heels clattering loudly on the floor. Polikov followed her. At the front door, Olga stopped, turned to him, and in a calmer tone said, "Look, Polikov, stop playing Mother Teresa. It doesn't suit you at all. Tell me, what are you going to do?" "You can see for yourself," he replied wearily. "The old man is almost on his deathbed. So what? Are we going to sit around and wait for him to die, or get better, and deign to deregister? And if he doesn't want to, then what? Are you going to sue him?" Her word, "die," grated on Polikov. He suppressed his irritation and replied, "Apparently we'll have to wait until he gets better. Victor says suing is useless because—" "Yes, I know what Victor says," Olga interrupted impatiently. "You told me yourself. But something has to be done. We can't just leave things like this. Is he going to live with us?" "Olga, what are you trying to achieve?" This conversation was increasingly getting on Polikov's nerves. Didn't she understand how unpleasant all of this was for him? "Do you want me to throw a sick and helpless old man out onto the street? Would you like that? Would I be more of a man in your eyes then?" "Don't be rude!" Olga shrieked. "Oh, look how conscientious we are. His own son abandoned him, but you, a stranger, can't. Do you want me to become as despicable as his son?" Polikov asked dryly, looking at his fiancée with distaste. Her beauty suddenly seemed repulsive to him. "Don't twist my words." She regained composure, lowered her tone, and changed tactics. After a pause, she spoke almost pleadingly. "Volodya, I'm sorry, I think I got carried away, but you have to understand me too. We've been together for so many years we decided to get married, and this man is ruining all our plans. Olga, I think we made a mistake. It's unlikely anything will work out between us." These words slipped out involuntarily. Olga was taken aback. For the first time in her life, she didn't know what to say. Polikov knew he was saying terrible things, but he couldn't stop. "Forgive me, but... Wait, Volodya, are you leaving me after all these years?" Olga asked, stunned. "Olga, we haven't celebrated our golden anniversary or raised 5 children together." Polikov tried to speak gently, but Olga felt a hint of mockery in his words. "Stop mocking me," she screamed. "You bastard scoundrel, you led me on, used me, and now... May you rot in hell with that old freak! I was going to break up with you ages ago anyway. Who needs you, you loser?" Olga shrieked the last words as she ran out of the apartment. Tears rang in her voice, and Polikov felt ashamed. But at the same time, he felt free, light, audacious, a way he hadn't felt in a long time. Olga ran down the stairs, and the echo of her footsteps reverberated against the green-painted walls. Polikov stood for a few minutes, then sighed and closed the door. 2 hours later, he sat on the edge of Vladimir Konstantinovich's bed. There was no other furniture in the apartment besides the bed. One could only sit on the floor. They had dinner. Polikov brought a whole bag of groceries and dishes. At the nearest supermarket, he bought a frying pan, a pot, a kettle, and plates. He was used to living alone, and household chores didn't bother him. He quickly made sandwiches, fried eggs, and brewed tea. The old man timidly asked for weak tea. "How could your own son have put you in such a situation?" Polakov asked. "Maxim is not my son," the old man replied. "He's my daughter's husband, my son-in-law. That's why I wondered why your last names were different." "And where is your daughter then?" "She died 10 years ago. She was hit by a car." The cup in the old man's hand trembled slightly. He paused, then continued. "Maxim didn't marry for a long time. We raised Mashenka together. She was 7 when Natasha passed away. A year ago, Maxim met a woman, a good, thrifty woman named Galina. They decided to get married, sell this apartment and her 2-room apartment, and buy a house outside the city." Polakov couldn't help but smirk to himself, realizing that Shakov had been right in his predictions. So they want to buy a house. So much for Nizhny Novgorod, Vladimir Ilyich, he thought to himself. "Would you like more tea?" Polakov offered, trying to be hospitable. Vladimir Konstantinovich thanked him, but declined. Polakov took the empty cup and went to the kitchen. Returning to the room, he asked, with feigned indifference, "So, this apartment isn't yours, but your son-in-law's?" "Natasha and I sold ours. Maxim added some money and we bought this one. It was registered in Maxim's name," the old man explained. "Ah, I see. So it's in Maxim's name. And you're, well, not involved," Polakov drawled, trying to understand the true state of affairs. The old man remained silent, avoiding eye contact. "Listen, did you know your relatives weren't planning to take you to the new house? Tell me honestly, did you or didn't you?" Polakov pressed. The old man remained silent again, evading a direct answer. "Clear. So you knew?" Polakov concluded. "Yes, I accidentally overheard Galya and Maxim talking in the kitchen," Vladimir Konstantinovich said softly. They were arguing. She told him, "I'm not living with a stranger's old man. Cleaning up after him, washing his clothes. It would be one thing to care for your own father. But who is this man to me? And who is he to you and him? What about him? He's tired of being alone. You have to understand him too. Is it easy to raise a child alone?" Galya laid down an ultimatum. "Either your father-in-law or me." Maxim suffered greatly. "Oh, the poor dear," Polakov couldn't help but exclaim. But the old man didn't notice his irony. He felt terrible. He couldn't look me in the eye. Well, I thought, if I tell him I know everything, if I start shaming him, Galya will leave him. And what will become of him then? And Mashenka is already grown up. She just finished her first year of university. She's a good girl, but... And Mashenka, the good girl, didn't she feel sorry for her own grandfather? Polakov asked acerbically. He found it repugnant to hear about Maxim's suffering and Masha's good nature when they had so readily abandoned a close relative. He wanted to say something more in the same vein, but stopped himself when he saw the old man's sad face. "Oh, please forgive me," Polakov quickly said. "I'm prying into matters that don't concern me. It's just, why didn't you think about yourself?" "Vladimir Ilyich, I am 81 years old. At this age, it's somewhat foolish to think about my own comfort." The old man smiled weakly. "How much time do I have left?" "I'm sorry," Polakov repeated, feeling guilty for some reason. His breath caught, and a lump formed in his throat. He rose from the creaking bed and walked to the window. "Oh, please, don't apologize," Vladimir Konstantinovich objected warmly. "I am entirely to blame before you. You quarreled with your fiancé because of me." "Oh, come on. Things haven't been working out between us for a long time," Polakov reassured him. surprised by his own callousness. He had shed a worn-out relationship like a snake sheds its old skin, and he was glad. Perhaps Olga was right, and he truly was a scoundrel and a brute. All right, this isn't about me right now. He sat back down on the edge of the bed, took off his glasses, and rubbed his eyes. Do you have relatives anywhere? Where do you plan to live? I mean, when you recover? I have a sister living in Nizhnekamsk. Anastasia, Vladimir Konstantinovich said, after a brief pause. I'll move in with her. As soon as I'm back on my feet, I'll deregister and leave right away. Please don't worry. Who does she live with? No one. She's alone, a widow. Did you at least warn her? What if she turns you away? No, she won't turn me away. Nastiona is a good woman. The old man's eyes welled up. Well then, if that's the case, get well peacefully. And please don't be angry that I yelled at you. Polakov concluded awkwardly, putting his glasses back on his nose. Oh, I'm not angry. In your place, I would have been even more outraged, and you are a very good person. I'm not so sure, Polakov smirked wryly, but thank you anyway. Polakov was nearing Kazan. It was 3 p.m, and the roads were relatively clear. He had been away from home for 4 days, on business in Samara. He planned to return tomorrow, but managed to free himself earlier. Polakov intended to stop at his favorite home-style food supermarket. He wanted to buy chak-chak and a 3-layer pie with prunes, lemon, and dried apricots. Grandpa loved these sweets very much. About 2 months had passed since Polakov moved into the new apartment. Grandpa, as Polakov had grown accustomed to calling Vladimir Konstantinovich, had recovered from his illness and was back on his feet. At first he was shy, trying to be quiet and inconspicuous, but gradually he settled in, became more talkative, livened up, and, despite Polakov's protests, began to help with household chores and go to the stores, always trying to be useful. Now they had dinner together, watched TV, discussed the news, and Polakov sometimes found himself surprised by the accuracy of the old man's assessments and the relevance of his comments. Polakov was accustomed to an independent, even solitary life, but Vladimir Konstantinovich's presence, strangely enough, didn't irritate him. Unbeknownst to himself, he had somehow grown close to the old man. Usually people who barely know each other find forced cohabitation burdensome. But Polakov didn't feel awkward in the old man's company. This was hardly due to his own merit. The old man simply turned out to be a surprisingly delicate person. He lacked the intrusive talkativeness and tendency to lecture often characteristic of older people. Grandpa didn't whine, didn't complain about life, didn't beg for sympathy, and conducted himself with quiet dignity. They no longer discussed the unusual situation they found themselves in. About a week ago, the old man announced that he had gone to the housing management office and deregistered from the apartment. Polakov nodded and asked the old man to postpone his departure until his return from Samara. He promised to help him pack and drive him to his sister's house. But his mood had somehow soured. Later, as he settled in for the night and listened to the old man cough in the next room, Polakov caught himself thinking that he would miss him, even though he should ostensibly be happy to finally be alone. He noticed that the old man had also become noticeably downcast lately, though he tried hard to hide it. Of course, at such an age, is it easy to leave a familiar place and move to a strange city? Everything here is familiar. Neighbors, pharmacies, shopkeepers, doctors. Lost in thought, Polakov drove automatically. the question resurfaced in his mind: should he send the old man to his sister? On the other hand, the old man had a solitary relative, and living together could be a solution. Moreover, the old man wasn't even a close relative, and it was high time Polakov settled his personal life. However, despite the logic and reasonableness of these arguments, they found no resonance in his soul, leaving an unpleasant aftertaste. Around 5 in the evening, Polakov was heading towards his apartment building's entrance, carrying 2 overflowing supermarket bags in each hand. Suddenly, the handle of one of the bags gave way, and its contents, a bottle of milk, a carton of Ryazhenka, and a can of condensed milk, spilled onto the sidewalk with a clatter. "Damn it!" Polakov muttered, crouching down to gather the scattered groceries. "Allow me to offer some help," a hoarse voice said beside him. Polakov looked up and saw Nikolai Igorovich, his first-floor neighbor. Despite the warm weather, the neighbor was dressed in a plaid flannel shirt and brushed fleece sweatpants, a cigarette invariably dangling from the corner of his mouth. "Thanks, I can manage," Polakov replied, trying to be brief. He had no desire to engage in conversation. "How's Volodka? Haven't seen him in a while. Has he fallen ill again?" Nikolai Igorovich inquired. "No, he seems fine. He's going to his sister's," Polakov replied. "To his sister's?" Nikolai Igorovich exclaimed, suddenly coughing. Polakov, having finished gathering the groceries, straightened up. "Yes, what about it?" he asked. "Wait, I don't understand. Is he unwell?" Nikolai Igorovich asked again, furrowing his thick gray eyebrows. "Why unwell?" Polakov replied, irritated. "You say he wants to go to his sister's?" "Yes, he does," Polakov confirmed, losing patience. "So what?" "But his sister died." Nikolai Igorovich dropped the bombshell, looking at Polakov with bewilderment. "Died? How?" Polakov stammered. "Anastasia, the one who lived in Nizhnekamsk. I was going to drive him there myself. Anastasia passed away about 5 years ago. Maybe more. What did he say himself?" "Excuse me, I have to go." Polakov interrupted him and almost ran towards the building entrance. Nikolai Igorovich watched him with a bewildered gaze. The elevator, as always, was occupied, and Polakov, without waiting, quickly climbed to his 4th floor, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He flung open the door, tossed the bags into a corner, and without taking off his shoes shouted, "Grandpa, Grandpa, are you home?" Silence reigned in the apartment. There were no hurried, shuffling footsteps or fragile old man's voice. Polakov scanned the hallway and noticed the blue house slippers he had once bought for the old man in the corner. They stood forlornly by the bedside table. However, the crutches, sticks, as the old man called them, and his worn brown sandals were missing. Polakov's heart tightened with a premonition. Grandpa left, he realized. He didn't want me to know he had nowhere to go. Polakov sank heavily to the floor, leaning his back against the wall, covered his head with his hands, and closed his eyes. At that moment, familiar sounds came from the hallway. The elevator stopped on their floor. I should close the door, or the apartment will be wide open, Polakov thought languidly, unable to bring himself to move. Volodya, I was expecting you tomorrow morning, a familiar voice unexpectedly said. Polakov sharply raised his head and turned towards the door. In the doorway stood the old man, leaning on his trusty stick, dressed in an old beige cotton suit and his usual sandals. In his right hand, he held a cloth bag. Noticing Polakov's gaze, the old man hastened to explain, lifting his string bag. I went to the store. I wanted to make some blini with cottage cheese for breakfast. You could eat after your journey. Why are you sitting there, Volodya? Are you sick? Polikov's ability to speak and act returned. He stood up and stepped towards the old man. The old man, not understanding anything, looked at him with alarm. Polikov silently smiled and hugged the old man tightly. I hope it's not too late, Polikov thought, heading towards the familiar door at the end of the corridor. He needed to make a call. He hadn't finished his thought when the door suddenly opened, and a girl in a blue sundress and white sandals appeared on the threshold. A small handbag with a thin strap hung from her shoulder. "You!" Katya Belonogova whispered softly, looking at Polikov with her incredibly beautiful, clear eyes. Lately, he had often recalled her habit of biting her lower lip, her meek, shy smile, her childlike voice, and her fragile figure. "It's me," Polikov simply replied. They stood in silence for a few seconds, neither daring to speak. Then Polikov asked, "Are you heading home now?" "I mean, is your workday over?" "Yes, home, just need to lock up the office," Katya replied. She blushed, turned her back to Polikov, and began fumbling with the lock. Her hands trembled slightly, and the lock wouldn't yield. "May I try?" Polikov offered. But at that moment, the key finally yielded and turned obediently in the lock. "It's done, thank you," she said hurriedly. And then, gathering her courage, asked, "Vladimir Ilyich, why did you come? Did something happen?" Polikov closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, then spoke with sincerity. "You know, Katya, something happened that made me have an overwhelming desire to see you specifically. And allow me a small request. Let's drop the formalities and stop using my patronymic. All right?" The young woman seemed to lose her voice for a moment, surprised. "Volodya," she suggested, trying to hide her embarrassment. "What if we spent this evening somewhere together?" "With great pleasure. Let's definitely go somewhere," Katya replied readily. And in her voice, Polikov caught notes of a bright smile, as if the tension that had hung in the air instantly dissipated. He too involuntarily smiled, feeling lightness and joy, and said warmly, "Katyusha, in that case, I'd like to invite you to dinner at my place. I would be very pleased to introduce you to my grandfather, if you don't mind, of course." "Of course, I'd love to," Katya replied. And they slowly walked down the corridor towards the stairs, anticipating a pleasant evening.